Hello and welcome to interest.co.nz. I'm Janae Tibshirani and today I'm joined by Treasury's Secretary, Gabriel Makhlouf. Thank you for joining us, Gabriel.
Welcome.
Look, in 2012 you did a speech which really summed up Treasury's job, and I just want to read back an excerpt from that speech to you. You said, "Treasury is a policy ideas factory and service delivery shop with the government as a very discerning customer. While they might not take everything on our shelves and sometimes may not purchase anything at all or may get something elsewhere, we need our customer to feel assured that the Treasury delivers the right range of products of the highest quality." Mr. Makhlouf, I'm just wondering, how has the government's shopping habits, so to speak, from Treasury's ideas factory changed since you delivered the speech in 2012?
Well, I think the government continues to have very high expectations of the Treasury, and we have very high expectations of ourselves. Whether the shopping habits have changed particularly, I'm not sure. The government's been pretty, it's been following a plan in its fiscal strategy, a plan in its business growth agenda. There's a whole bunch of activity that the government's been involved in, which the Treasury advises on. I think, if anything, just back where I started, I think the government has just continued to maintain very high expectations of the quality of the advice they expect from us and the execution they expect from us.
Sure. Okay. And that, just talking about that quality and execution, there have been a number of instances that have come to light in recent times where Treasury has provided advice and the government doesn't seem to have taken it. And a few of the examples that come to my mind are Treasury's raised its concerns over the level of migration coming into New Zealand and concerns around the fact that might be suppressing wage growth in New Zealand. It's also said the government should consider including agriculture in the emissions trading scheme. The Economic Development Minister, Stephen Joyce, has sort of shut down some of Treasury's forecasts for GDP per capita, which ended up being correct, but he slated the forecast at the time. And then the Minister supporting Greater Christchurch Regeneration, Jerry Brownlee, has also been quite scathing of the progress reports Treasury's done of some of the major projects in Christchurch, and has used some strong language, even calling the reports utter tripe and saying they've been done by people who fluff about the place pontificating. So quite strong language there, and not that flattering. I'm just wondering, what you make of these examples.
Well, I think there's a mix of things that you talked about there. For example, the forecasts. At the end of the day, we make forecasts to the best of our professional judgment, and we do that, twice a year, and in election year a third time. And that's not advice. That's us giving our best view of how we think the economy is going to go. You've picked a few examples. There's loads of examples where the government has basically taken our advice, and in some of the ones you've just described, there are genuinely political choices to be made, and the government at the end of the day makes political choices. So I'm completely relaxed about it. The major projects report. We published the latest one a week ago. The Minister of Finance issued a press release about it, and explains why we published that report. And it goes to Cabinet, and Cabinet considers it. The government has a number of very big projects. It makes very big investments, and it wants to keep track of how it's doing. And I don't have a problem with people disagreeing with our advice. I want to make sure that the work we do is of extremely high quality, and I'm very confident that by and large, everyone makes mistakes, but by and large, our work is of high quality. And I think if you have the time and you go through our website, and you'll see we publish a huge amount of the advice that goes to government. We publish all of our budget advice, and I think if you went through all that, you'd probably get a much better balanced view of the quality of what we do and the extent to which it delivers the sorts of things that the government expects us to deliver for them.
Sure. Yes, no, I accept that I have just cherry-picked a few examples that have been quite high profile in the media. But, I mean, migration is a key one. That is, of all the issues the government is dealing with at the moment, this is one of the most contentious issues. It's, arguably increasing our GDP overall, but it's questionable as to how it's affecting our GDP per capita, so whether it's actually increasing the living standards of individuals. And this is it's a political issue. One may have thought that one of the government's key advisors, the government might listen to some of that advice, especially when it was so strong.
Well, I'll make two observations there. One is that some of these things take time to deliberate over and to think about. So the fact that we've given advice at one particular moment in time and it hasn't been taken doesn't mean that it won't be taken later on. So just sort of bear that in mind. But secondly, I mean, the immigration thing, I think, is actually quite a complicated issue. And one of the things we as a community at large, and not just officials and politicians, need to make sure is that we understand the issue at a more substantive level than the general sort of one-liners we see. So, let's talk about immigration. Around a third of migrants are actually New Zealanders coming back and Australians coming back. It's quite hard to do much about those. Around 20%, or just over 20% of them, are students. And students are quite an important revenue generator for the country and for universities. And they also build, when they go back to their countries, they build connections for us,
yes,
which matter for our longer-term prosperity. And then it's about a third of migrants are actually on work visas. And, a lot of those work visas, businesses tell us they need the skills to grow their firms. Now, it's important that we're very careful that the skills that are demanded are actually the skills that are being provided, that the rules that we've got are working appropriately. I'm not surprised that because of the political nature or something like that, ministers will be very careful and will take their time to think about how to make change. But I would, ministers have in the past tweaked the rules to make sure issues like the ones you mentioned earlier are addressed, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make them in the future.
Okay. So you're saying that just because they haven't acted on the advice now doesn't mean to say that it might not happen in the future.
That's partly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm also encouraging you and your viewers when they hear people talking about immigration to just appreciate that it's not a straightforward. There's no straightforward, easy answer to it.
Sure.
It's a bit more complicated than at first it looks, and a lot of those work visas, firms want the skills so that they can grow and create jobs.
Yes.
Right. So it's a big issue.
Yes. No, it is. Do you think that the government is you're becoming more or less engaged with the government? I don't know if you can put that on that sort of whether it's that simple, but I just still am interested in the fact that this is a really key issue that Treasury's advised the government on, that it hasn't yet responded to. I don't know if it will. I'm just wondering whether you think the government is becoming more or less attuned to the advice coming from Treasury.
Well, in general.
Yes.
I think the government's very attuned to the advice it gets from the Treasury. It's not it hasn't gone up or it hasn't gone down. I mean, I think we obviously a lot of our advice is directed through the Minister of Finance. We play a big role supporting the Minister of Finance put his budget together. I think it would be giving a wrong impression if we were if we left people with the impression that the government is becoming more or less engaged. I mean, we work for the government. We've been working for the government since it came into office. We worked for the previous government, and at some point we'll work for future governments.